It is extensible. There's a lot of flexibility in the code base of N2. And one of the nice things about it is being a relatively new CMS, it supports both building for a web form solution and for building for an ASP.NET MVC solution right out of the box. It was built with that idea in mind. So there's a core kind of CMS engine behind CMS, behind N2, and then there's two kind of end user versions for the two different frameworks. You can have some influence over the direction of N2 currently. Being such a young project, there's a reasonably active forum on the Codeplex website where they kind of have set up home. You can jump in there and kind of have a say. I found that when I posted a question in there, I think I got a reply sort of sub 24 hours. It was pretty good. There's enough of a vibrant community there for it to be growing. Why shouldn't you use N2? If you really want commercial support. So if you're a big company or for whatever reason you need to be able to pick up the phone and tell them, you know, your product sucks, you can't really do that with N2. It is a purely open source development effort at the moment. It doesn't have a whole lot of those kind of enterprisey features that larger CMSs have. For example, content shipping, things like that, you won't find in N2. Okay? It is for building a lightweight website. Having said that, being that it's quite nicely built and it is extensible, if you have development capability, you can kind of build up features that you want, but that may not be the sort of stuff you actually want to be doing in your organization. It also has relatively basic administration. So my talk today, or my segment of this talk, is actually probably going to be considerably shorter than the other two guys. Their products that they're demonstrating are much larger, much more mature. They'll be fighting it out feature for feature to see who's going to win. My one that I'm demonstrating is going to be pretty straightforward. I should say we have no actual connection to the N2 CMS. Okay, it was simply a case of I wanted to, I think it's on the next slide actually, I wanted to build a website using a CMS that worked with MVC, and there really wasn't any decent ones out there for a wee while there. Found this one, like I say, we're a bunch of nerds, so it works well with us. I really liked the fact that it had really elegant extensibility points. Okay, so I could extend it nicely, and I'll show you some stuff around that shortly. Really easy to get started. So if you actually grab the MVC demo, which is what I'll be using today, you can pretty much load it up in Visual Studio, hit F5, there's your site. Okay, uses a SQL Express database file that comes with it, which, you know, obviously when you actually go and deploy, you're not going to use that. So when you set it up properly on your production environment or whatever, you give it a proper connection string to your big SQL server or whatever, and it will step you through a wizard that's 3 steps long, provisions your database, has all that kind of import export that you would expect for content and page types and things like that when you're ready to go live. I did like the fact that it had quite simple administration. So my history is that way back in the dark old days, I worked with Intergen, and I specialized a lot in the CMS space. So I've worked with Microsoft Content Management Server, worked with EpiServer, and a few others. And I really liked some of those that they had, but they tended to have quite involved administration environments, and I quite like that N2 is a fairly simplified one. It also doesn't get in my way. So if you're ever building a site for a customer, for example, let's stick with the MVC story, and they would ask you, you know, can you also build in some CMS capability? Because inevitably customers think that's sort of a 20-minute exercise for any developer to build a full versioned, you know, asset management tracking system for a website. N2 works quite nicely for that. You can integrate it like any other piece into an MVC solution and add content management capabilities to it without actually taking over the entire website, if that makes sense. And now onto a really basic demo. Okay, so I've just pulled down that MVC test. You can grab it off their website, and I've just loaded it up here in Visual Studio. You'll see that we've got the usual suspects in there. It's actually really small, isn't it? The controllers, the models, the views. The models in here are actually how you go and build up your content types effectively. So a content type is really like a page type. Generally has a one-to-one mapping, but you can use inheritance structures in there as well. So if we just jump into, for example, content page, you can see how they are building up a page type. So you can see here they're inheriting off an abstract page, which is just a type where they share a bunch of common things for a page, you know, title, meta description, whatnot. And you can just configure it up nicely using these attributes. So here we create an editable free text area. You can create obviously drop-down combos, all that sort of thing. And you can also create your own editors really simply and easily. So for example, on our website, because we predominantly sell products, we wanted to be able to select products from our database from a drop-down to suggest what was actually on that page. That was easy. We just made up our own attribute for that, which pulls it from another database, plugs it in, and you can select it from the administration area. So that's a really simple, nice thing to do. You'll see up here you can also give various hints to the installer. So it says preferred start page. One thing that is quite nice about N2 that's a little bit more up there is that it does support running multiple websites under one installation. So that used to be quite a common thing we'd actually run into at Intergen, is somebody would build a website, for example, on, I don't know, Episerver, and then they would want to run another marketing site or something, or some temporary promo site. And the way that product was licensed is you actually had to pay per site, while N2 has that built in. And I believe, maybe these guys might actually know better, is that the lead guy behind N2 actually either ended up being employed at Episerver or he left Episerver to build this. So there's a lot of things that are actually quite in common between the two. There's not a heck of a lot more to kind of show in the actual code here. MVC-wise, you're kind of still passing through your model object. Effectively echoes out that page type object, but it's populated with the data for that given page. There's some stuff there that you set up around the routing. So if we run this up, I haven't customized this at all. So this is just going to load this out of the box experience. So you'll have a feeling for what you're going to see when you grab this project off the website. Oh, that worked wonderfully, didn't it? It's the old MVC issue where if you've actually got an ASPX file selected, it tries to load it. You know, so there we go. That really sexy website that MVC has. So I'm not going to bother showing you stuff on the actual website, because obviously a website is a website is a website. How you style that up is your choice. But if we bang in /N2, which is the way that we get into the admin area for N2, so we get prompted to log in. So I am admin, and the password is change me by default, and that's actually weirdly kind of configured straight in the web config as a starter. Okay, not the world's most great system there, but that I believe is just your starter way of getting cracking. It has a whole role system and all of that built in where you go and provision users and whatnot. So we'll log in. Now, I should point out actually I'm running a beta of Chrome. So in fact I updated this yesterday and I probably should have tested it. So fingers crossed for me. All right. Okay, cool. So this is your admin area. It's obviously loading super fast given it's hooking up localhost. Okay, you get your usual standard suspects. So you get this tree view here of the actual structure of your website. Just never remember this password. You can drill in, you know, let's go and edit this page here. You can manage the permissions. I really didn't want to kind of get into a breakdown of feature by feature, blow by blow. I just want to give a really high level kind of feel here for what's going on. This thing's loading it, so it loads up a rich text editor using the FCK editor. So these are effectively just the properties that we defined on that class file that I showed you earlier. So if you actually wanted to say, oh, you know, we're running this promotion and we want to have a special promo box now on the page, you just dive into that class, you add in a property for it, attribute it up correctly, do a build deploy, and it automatically updates the database to handle that for you. I think the actual database for N2 is 4 tables. Like, it is freaking micro. Like, it's just a little meta model, which is quite nice, really. You can manage your uploads. So, for example, if you actually want to put assets into the site, like images and things like that, however, they're not really versioned the same way as the pages are. So that's something to note if you wanted a system that actually really managed content, all content, not just web pages, then this may not be the solution for you. It is multilingual, so you can manage languages throughout the site and the content, which was something that was important to us because most of our customers are overseas, so we wanted to be able to have German pages and things like that. And in some CMSs, that's something that they kind of charge more for or don't offer at all. I'm not sure I'm going to go into too many more settings here because I just wanted to give you a taste of what you're going to see when you fire this up. So, I will show you one setting that I absolutely love. It seems relatively pointless to most, however, is that you can retheme this guy back here, because this is the most important thing ever. So I like dark colours for my admin area. There you go. Beat that, Kentico. Yeah, probably got like 50,000 themes in the damn library. Okay, so that kind of ends the really quick run through of N2 and what you're kind of going to get. You can go to n2cms.com, pull it down. Like I say, they have starter packs for MVC and web forms. They also have slightly larger ones that have more data in them. You can also download the source code to just the engine and poke around. It's actually not bad code to go and have a read through. Really easy to follow. A few things that I found like a little bit difficult and kind of how does this bit work, because obviously open source projects usually aren't the world's most documented projects. It was quite easy to tell what was going on from the source code. So there are the two sites there. And I think the source code is actually hosted in Google Code, because what is an open source project without huge fragmentation over many websites? And that's me done. So I'm going to have one of these guys come up and start plugging in his bits and pieces. If you want to ask me any questions, you'll track me down at, come on up, bro. And around TechEd, add me on Twitter, send me an email, anything, it's all good.
Hello everyone. Mic's working, that's a good start. I'll let you get started. Do the little flicky thing. There we go. That's me. I'll just wait so no pressure. So I'm going to talk about Kentico. Hands up who has heard of Kentico. Awesome. Hands up who has used Kentico as a developer, as a user. So you've, okay. That's pretty good. Pretty good. It's a delicate operation. So it's not my laptop. Friends new Dell. Okay, I'm Keith Patton. I'm the development manager over at a company called Marker Studio over in Ponsonby. And back in the day, I, like anyone who's about in the late 90s, wrote my own CMS. It was the most exciting thing ever to do. No one had ever done it before. Started a company, sold the CMS for 5 years. That's, you know, pain and pleasure, writing your own CMS, fragmenting it for lots of clients who want all sorts of different updates and then having to do all the product support. Then I came to New Zealand, got married, and decided I never want to write a CMS again. I want to use someone else's CMS. So I'm a certified SharePoint architect and developer. Used a bit of Umbraco, lots of .NET Nuke, content management server, and somehow I've become this sort of Kentico person over the last few years. Loves Kentico and talks about it. So Marker Studio is a Kentico Gold partner in Australasia, one of a handful of companies that pretty much all of our web development of any level of complexity will be using Kentico. We'll use WordPress for some smaller stuff, some PHP stuff, but mainly anything of a certain size we do in Kentico. Last 18 months we've done 12, ranging from, you know, sort of 15, 20 day developments right up to several $100,000 projects. So and you know, we've got a couple of examples of, this is maps.yellow.co.nz, gets about 130,000 uniques a month, probably, you know, reasonably highly trafficked site, integrates with Google, doesn't look like a normal content managed site, it's got Google Maps and lots of Ajaxy things going on. So people say, you know, CMS, what does it sort of predicate or allow you to do on the front end? Well, it's just, you know, it's just, as we'll see, it's, this is what it is. It's just a normal ASP.NET website. It's a SQL Server 2008 backend. I think it has 2005 support as well. There's an administration site, cross-platform. The last version is 5.5. It was released in 2004. That's pretty much when I started working with it, about 6 months after, when it was on its early versions. And it was, not many people knew about it then, but over time it's gone from being positioned as a sort of SME solution, small companies, into more of the SharePoint space. So you do have SharePoint for your big intranets and your big companies that want to spend licensing money, etc., on SharePoint. But Kentico is increasingly encroaching onto that sort of six-figure, large project size, as well as being able to do the small websites as well that are done in you know, 10, 15, 20 days. So it covers a wide range of solutions, which is why, as a provider to clients, we really like it. I'm not going to show you lots. I showed you one, which was our maps one, but if you go to showcase.spx, there are hundreds and hundreds, I think over 4,000 websites have been done worldwide with Kentico, in all sorts of verticals, you know, property, health, education, insurance. So go there if you want to be impressed with some of the sites. Architecturally, it's a standard three-tier solution. You have a choice of front-end approaches. For a business end user, you've got a portal engine, which is more like a sort of SharePoint WYSIWYG, drag things about, or you've got SPX pages, which we like to use because we can provide a greater level of control for our clients using SPXs than we can the portal engine. You've got two options there. In the middle, you've got a really comprehensive API, lots of providers that Kentico give you out of the box, lots of extensibility points around event handling when things get saved and updated, and everything goes into a database. I say everything. All the binary stuff does go in there, but there's lots of caching options to use the file system, offload it to SAN, or if you're not using the cloud, you know, to save stuff on file system for performance, rather than reading it out of a database each time someone loads your banner up. So, and yeah, I should mention there's an administration interface there, which we'll look at in a second. It is a CMS, but it's flexibility. It's a development platform. We have done supplier management systems, custom web apps, intranets, bespoke e-commerce systems, blogging systems, and forums, all using either a lot of the core bits that come with Kentico, or just taking some of the providers in the database and wiring up interfaces. So it's really flexible from a .NET developer's point of view. You can get it and use the features that come out on the front end, or you can take some of their providers and some of their modules and put something together quite easily. Okay, enough of that. I'm going to try and show 5 demos. That's going to be a bit impressive, 5 minutes of that, but let's have a go. So I'll just nip in. So resolution sucks. So this is the back end. It's like Office ribbon. I'll just close it all. So standard content tree on the side. What I'm going to do is I'm simply going to update. I'm logged in as an admin, and I'm going to go, I'm here, and I'm writing this. And then I'm going to save it. All right, so that was an editable region, I call it, inside the page. You can plonk those wherever you want. That looks like my demo's going to go. Let's see if I can get that. Yep, let's see if I'm here on the line. Oh, was it? Oh, I'm in the services page. That's the next demo. Right, I'll do that one now. That's workflow. No, I'll do that. I'll go back to the home page. Thanks. So it works. Workflow. It didn't appear on the live site straight away. Did you see that? How clever that was? Yeah. Fooled even me. I'm here, I think. Go. Okay. Back to the home page. Load the home page. Yes. See? Very simple. I didn't expect to have a problem with that one. Okay, manage data models with ease. So you saw an example of modifying a C# class to get something to appear on the model and it pumping something out on the front end. In Kentico, the CMS site manager has just got tons and tons of features for developers to manage the back end stuff. I'm going to show you document types, which is how the sort of analogy with the content types we saw in N2. I'm sure Umbraco's got something similar. These are all the built-in ones. A lot of what we do when we talk with a client and say really we're trying to translate what document types or database tables they need, and then they're represented in Kentico here as doc types. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into one of these things, and I'm going to edit, I'm going to add a field. So these are all the fields that come out of the box with the news one. So I'm going to say I want news field 1. I'm going to give it a size of 100. So this is very similar to going into design view in SQL Management Studio or something like that. And we're going to say lots of form controls you can use to represent on the form, so you can make your own one. If you have some autocomplete thing going on, I'm just going to use a text box. And I'm going to say OK. So now I've got news field 1. I'm going to go into the news section. I'm going to go into the form view, which you use for structured information, not those unstructured editable regions that content editors can go in and put lots of dodgy HTML in. But you can specify the fields here. So if I scroll down, I've now got my news field 1. So I'll put my field content. That could be anything, no code. And build it all up for your client and tell them you've done 1,000,000 days of work and you've only done 1. Not true, clients. There's lots of other work involved. And then we need that display on the site. So we're going to go back to the doc type and we're going to look at transformations. Now transformations are, you can use these. These are ways to transform the data that's in your doc type onto the page. Now you can do that with XSLT if you're particularly masochistic, or you can use a user control syntax, which is much nicer. I just know that the transformation for displaying the news on the home page that's being used is news detail. Can anyone tell me what I called the field? Was it news field 1? Okay, because otherwise it will explode. News field 1. See it? Go to news page and let's look at the actual page on the site. My field content. Better if I went back to the home page and looked at that. Oh, it's actually not. I need to navigate into the news. Yep, there we go. See the my field content there? So I just changed the detail transformation for the news item to include that field that I just added, and now all the content editors can go in and just add that. So you can manage the transformations, you can manage the user controls and the structure of your data, and it'll update on the site. It's quite easy to make those changes with a live running site. So what we'll do now is just have a quick look at the thing that I accidentally demoed at the start. So what I've done actually is in this services section, I've turned on workflow. You can say have 5 steps in your workflow, have 3 steps, and have these people approve at each level. And you can say apply this workflow to a particular type of content, or in this case I've said apply a 3-step workflow to the services section. So when I make a change like I did, it doesn't automatically appear on the site, and then you have to go submit to approval. When that happens, it can send emails out, and I just happen to have the other person in here within their My Desk. So this is like a dashboard for the other person who happens to be approver who comes in and can see this. And they go, okay, what's someone done? That's cool. I'll publish that. You can send a little message off if you don't like it. And then, so our services section, I'm here and writing this. Okay, so and that's all configurable through the back end, the workflows and the steps, the user roles who can be assigned to those steps. Another part of your work you do with your client, saying, what type of workflow do you want, whereabouts on the site do you want it. And a lot of it is about implementing that configuration in the back end before you even write any code. Oh yeah, versioning, I'll just show you quickly if you see that page in the properties. Let's see, automatically getting versioning, easy to roll back. You can put comments on, you can switch mistakes back, so it's all there. Security management. Okay, clients go on, approval's not enough. We don't want anyone to look at our services on our site. We want to make them only available to people who have logged in. So rather than having to write any code, just look at all of the things that are under that properties are to do with metadata. And one of them, there's just so much you can do on each node that's in the site. But I can just go to security, very similar to Windows Explorer type ACLs, and just say requires authentication. Yes. Now I haven't done the security trimming on the nav. It's still there, but when I click it, it brings the login form up. So you can control, and there was inheritance there, so you control security very much like a file system for your whole site, which is quite nice. And yeah, multi-site management. Just quickly, you can run as many sites as you want up to the part of your box or your capability to support all of the multiple sites. I've made one here. I'll just bring this down a little bit. So I made a new site. I can switch into it, and I'm automatically now managing the new site. You can share files, document types, page templates, SPX page templates, transformation. You can share everything and say, what site does it apply to? So you can, if you're doing multiple sites, you can think about your data model, and you can think about your presentation files, and you can think about how am I going to reuse those across multiple sites, which can be really powerful. A couple of years ago, we did about 12 Lion Nathan websites for all their beers and brands of the previous company. And it was very important to get that sort of consistency across all of those sites. Shall we make one? Yeah, why not? Yay, make a site. New site wizard. Another thing we do for clients is make site templates. So you can pre-build them and give them to a client and say, a bit like a SharePoint site template, but a bit easier. Let's give the client an e-commerce site. Objects. This should work. Let's give it a domain name that I know will work. The licensing works a lot off the domain names, so yeah, it's important to get those right. Then you got the option. What do you want to take out of the template? I'm just going to take everything. You could just take some bits of it. There you go. Licensing. Good sales work for the Umbraco open source guys when I get licensing errors in my demo. These are all the free, this is completely free download that I've taken, but best available out of the license, please select on some forms. So I'd have to select, yeah, I'll leave that one. But if I deselected the things that it's not allowing me to do because it's a free license, I'd be able to create that. So, does anyone want to see anything else? Any questions on what Kentico can do, if you're thinking about using it, or any problems you see? Yep. Sorry, the question was what, sorry? You can, yeah. There's a you can switch the in the settings. You can use OpenID, Facebook, or AD. So it will sync. There's a scheduled task, but it will sync and have AD as the master, and Kentico would be the slave. Yeah. Yeah. Most of them, yes. All of the content on the site and a lot of the artifacts that are used, like transformations that I showed, are all version controlled. When you do exports between the system, you can say, give me all the changes that I've made from this last deployment to here, and then export that and import it into your production environment. And that will include not just content changes, but as I say, security changes, blog post changes, which is pretty cool because it makes the deployment a lot easier. Oh, really? Basically, if you choose the SPX model for development, you get the whole SPX site comes out with all the pre-built user controls. You get all the source for the CMS desk backend, and you can take their web parts. There's a whole web parts model behind this. You can take, copy, paste, and adjust as you want. So it's got features coming out of its ears. Basically, is the big selling point with it. Oh, I'll just quickly, so just 1 second, go back to this, just to cover off the price. There's a free edition if you use a Kentico logo on your site. Pricing starts at about $1,000 US per site. You can get enterprise agreements that cover 10 plus sites. Some of our clients prefer that option. You get full support for a year included into the price, and all updates, minor and major updates to the site. Support's really good. You get full source of the back end. You can pay for the source and premium support, or you can partner with a gold partner who's got access to the source, like us, who can look at it for you if there's any problems, which there usually isn't. You can see all the pricing. Licensing's a bit complicated. It's more complicated than Office, I think, but if you have a go at reading it at /buy, or again, you can ask someone like us who've spent many hours trying to understand it for our clients. And yeah, Marcus Studio, just to call out for that. I'm Kay Patton. Have a look at Kentico, have a look at Marcus Studio. Ping me if you've got any questions or you need anything else. I'll hand over to Mr. Umbraco and turn my mic off.
plug all this crap in. It was there. Oh, that's me. No, it's not me. That's me. There we go. That's really wide. Okay, all good. Now let's just kick that slide deck up. Okay. My name's Peter. I'm a developer and a trainer. I'm the official Umbraco trainer for Australasia. So I certify companies in New Zealand and Australia in the product. Just skip over that because you don't need to know that. The other things that you need to know about me is that I'm a core team member on the Umbraco project. And I've been using Umbraco for about 4 years and have been a web developer for about 11. So what is Umbraco? Umbraco is a web content management system. It's not a document management system. It's basically really good at dealing with building websites. It's 100% open source, so it's free. It's C# based, ASP.NET web forms. It currently supports .4 and 3.5. And basically the original goal when the project kicked off was to create something that was simple, beautiful, and intuitive. So it was started by Niels Hardvig from Denmark in the year 2000. It started as an ASP Classic project and progressed into being a .NET 1.1 product, and the version 1 was released 2003, and then it was open sourced in 2004. So some of the numbers around Umbraco, in the last year there's been 250,000 downloads. We have worldwide around 91,500 active installs, and how we judge that is based on the domain name and pingback, because there's a update checker in the back office that basically calls back home occasionally to see what's going on, and we track those stats. In the last 12 months we've done about 8 releases as well, sort of point releases for bug fixes and updates and new features. So who's using Umbraco? This is I guess what some people like to know for the marketing side of things. Well, ASP.NET, the actual Microsoft community site, is running off Umbraco. Well, at least the front end side of it, all the content driven stuff, and not the forums. And that was released recently. You probably saw all the noise on Twitter about that. Wired.co.uk. So we've got some really big publishing houses using it. Condé Nast being the biggest of them. So they were running the Wired magazine, GQ magazine, Vogue magazine. So those are all Condé Nast magazines. In New Zealand, we've got the Christchurch Regional Council is using it for their tourism body. And SanDisk in the States is using it for all of their content for their site. And here in Auckland, I'm not sure if it's further than Auckland, I don't get out of Auckland much, but Event Cinemas, they're also running Umbraco. So I'm just going to go through some points around why certain groups like Umbraco. We'll start with the content editors. And here's some real quick points. It's browser-based. It's cross-platform, so you can run it in IE, Firefox, Chrome, Safari. It's basically your choice. It's really fast. It's really simple and intuitive to get your head around. We can integrate with things like Word and LiveWriter as well. So say you've got staff who need to update news feeds or answer FAQ questions or something like that are coming in off their website. You can integrate with Word or LiveWriter to get them working off a desktop app that they're familiar with, rather than logging into a CMS. There is content versioning and rollback, and you also have content scheduling, so you can schedule your publishing for future and also to take the content down as well. And there's also a simple, it's not quite as complex as the Kentico one, content notification and approval system, so a really simple workflow. So why a developer would choose Umbraco? It was developed by developers. It is developer focused in terms of how you work with the system. It is fully extensible. The full API is open, so you can do whatever you want with it. You can extend the system. You can bring custom sections into the admin, so you can basically integrate your third-party applications into Umbraco itself, so that you can have a sort of seamless experience. Basically, to work with .NET, you're just using user controls, and you have an eventing model, so you can hook into creation and publishing actions that are going on. And you've got web services as well, so you can create content via the web services. And there's also a REST model in there, so you can interact with the back office and add your own sort of REST functionality into it as well. And then the last thing that's on my list there is packages, and that's probably one of the most important reasons why developers really like Umbraco, is they can package up their own functionality and install it in every installation that they create, or they can go to the community and browse through all of the open source or publicly available packages, so that they can cut down on the amount of work that they're having to do in creating their site. So I'm just going to bring this slide up first. So this is kind of like just a real simplistic view of how Umbraco stacks up before we sort of get into the demo. This will become clear while I'm working through it. But we have, just like Kentico, we have document type that basically describes what our content type is. And that basically is a modeling tool for deciding how our XML, or what the raw content in Umbraco is actually stored as in the database and on the disk. And then from there, we transform that content using the templates and a combination of templates and macros. And those macros, because we've got the CLR integration into Umbraco, you can write your macros in XSLT, .NET, Ruby, Python, LOL code even is one of the extensions that's been put in there. And then finally, you get your rendered web page output. So I'm just going to flick over to a demo. So what I've done is I've basically installed Umbraco and installed what they call the runway package, which is like a very, very simplistic starter website that comes with Umbraco, and it's an option during the installation to install runway. I haven't installed any of the runway features because I want to sort of put the site together very quickly for you. So I've left out the navigation and such. So we're going to work with this, and we're going to extend it out, and I'm going to add a news listing to this site as well. So if I just come to this tab here, which is basically what the back office looks like when you log in. We have the content tree here on the left. This is the content administration section. So you've got content tree on the left. You've got what they call the dashboard on the right. In the dashboard, you can install your own user controls and dashboard controls in there, so you can pretty much give your editors a view of what's going on in the back office around whatever you want to present them. And then down the bottom here, we have what we call our section chooser, or the list of applications that are available in the back office. So out of the box, you've got the content, the media, the users, which basically controls the back office user system. We have the settings section, is where you develop up your document types and your templates, and work with your style sheets if you want to work with them through the back office. The developer section, where you create your macros and extend Umbraco to do the extra things that you needed to do. And finally, the members section, because there's a built-in membership system in here where you can create what they call member types, analogous to document types, where you can define the properties that describe what your members of your public members of your website look like. So first thing we need to do to our website is I'm going to have to add a navigation, because we've actually got a set of pages here. Sorry, I'm going to step back one step, because let's actually look at how we edit content in Umbraco. So we've got a tree, and when we click on a page in our tree, we get in the dashboard area is the content editing interface. Now, when we build up our document types, we describe what this editing interface looks like in terms of setting up our tabs and then setting up the properties that exist on those tabs. We'll go through that when we do the news listing demo. So we also can preview our content before it goes live. So if I just make a change to this. Spell. It helps if you save it first. If we go to preview, what we have here is we've got this banner on the corner that basically tells us that we're in preview mode. And you can see here is my content change. If I jump out of preview mode, the change disappears. That was a new feature that was added in the last iteration of the product. Before that, it didn't actually work properly. So being open source, there are bugs. We all sort of do this in our spare time. So it's, but I'll get into the commercial side of Umbraco in a minute. So that was basically you can install rich text editors. You can add as many properties to these document types as you want. So basically, it's you can think of it as a extendable database that you can basically grow and expand using document types. What the content structure of your site looks like. There's no limitation on how many document types or properties a page can have. How many properties a page can have, or how many document types you can have in your system. So what I want to do, because everybody kind of gets content editing, it's pretty simple. And things like creating pages are right-click operations. So it can create a new page. And we can select what kind of content type it is. So in our case, because we're starting at the root here, we have a choice of two. So we can say it's a text page. And edit up our content. If we were working in the sort of simple notifications workflow, if I was logged in as a writer, I would have the send to publish option rather than the publishing option. And then basically that just notifies editors that something's changed in the back office. Okay, so let's look at document types. So we just jump into the settings section here. And basically a document type describes our page, or what our content object looks like. You don't necessarily have to have a one-to-one relationship between content types and templates and so forth. You basically can describe small chunks as a document type. Say, for instance, where you've got an image gallery and you want to create an instance for each of those images, but each of those images themselves don't have a content page. We can, create content types that actually have no sort of presentation layer. So basically we have a set of tabs. The info tab is like the metadata around what a document type is. Things like what the friendly name to our users is, what the alias that's used in code is, how it's represented in the tree, what the templates that it's allowed to use in the system are, because you can represent content using multiple templates. So you can chop and change those templates on the fly if you want to, using there's an alternate template option. So you can have multiple templates to represent that one type of content. We often use that where you've got a website with a Flash object on it, and to deliver the XML that drives the Flash object or the Silverlight object, you have an alternate template that renders that XML content back to the page, those sort of things, without actually having to create a physical page to house that content. Okay. The structure tab basically describes what can be created under what. So in this case, the runway text page can have runway text pages hanging off it. So we end up building up this fairly strongly typed structure around how our site should look, and that dictates where people can create content. So we can stop them from creating content where they're not meant to create it. The tabs tab basically describes the tabs that exist across the top of our editing interface. And we can add as many tabs as we want. It basically just wraps around when you've got more than will fit on the list. And then we have generic properties, which basically is where we create our properties that describe our document. So in our case, if I wanted to add a new property to our text page, I just click and create and just say our property. And we can select what kind of editor it has. So, for instance, these are all the ones that come in the package, but you can extend it by installing third-party packages, or grabbing out of the package repository, and I'll just show that to you in the developer section when we get there. So, for instance, I can add another text string to this, or a text multi-line text box, which, for instance, and then when I see it's chucked it on the generic tab, I can throw that on the content tab. And now basically every one of my text pages in my site now has that new property, which is down here. We can add whatever we want. Okay. Now obviously that's not going to render unless we've got some sort of markup to present it on our template. So the way that Umbraco works, as I said before, you've got the top layer, which is the document types, and then that basically designs your XML and our content. We then have templates, and basically you can have as many templates in the system as you want. They're just .NET master pages, so you can edit these in Visual Studio if you want to. So if we wanted to add that new property on our text page, we just come to our text page master, and we can throw in our new property. So all of our custom properties are at the top here, and we have, where is it, our property. And we have some simple formatting options, so for dates and things. And if I save that, come back to our page and refresh that, that's our new content there. So it's pretty simple to sort of build up your templates very quickly, either through the interface or using Visual Studio. There is IntelliSense for the Umbraco items inside of Visual Studio. So I just want to quickly sort of show you how to do some functional things with Umbraco. The main way that most people work with it to start with is XSLT. So we want to create a new top level navigation for our site. So if I just go top navigation, I've already done this, and create a macro. I didn't want to do that. So we have some template options when we're creating that. So if I go top navigation, these are the templates that are in the system, and you can actually get going really quickly using these templates. So I'm just going to use this subpages by level. Every piece of content has a level in Umbraco, and if I set that to level 1, it's going to give me all of my top level nav items. So, and it's also, I tick the box initially with the to create the macros. So that XSLT file is wired up into the system using macros. And we have some options in here for caching, etc. And we can pass parameters into our macros from our content. So we have a lot of options as to how we work with our macros. But I'll go into that tomorrow because I've got a full hour-long session on Umbraco where we sort of get a bit deeper into it. But if I just come back to our templates and throw that navigation in. Right here. Okay, so now our site should have a navigation if all's gone to plan. Okay, so I mean you can go in and you can mess with the XSLT. It's just a text file in the system. It exists on the disk as well, so you can open it up in Visual Studio also. So let's just sort of just show you this. So this is basically what a sort of bare Umbraco website looks like. I've just excluded some things from my Visual Studio site just so that I'm not sort of messing it up and making it too complicated. So basically that XSLT file out of Visual Studio, I can place breakpoints in it and debug that XSLT as well and actually watch it while it's rendering as long as I am able to attach to my website, either with attached process or debugging directly out of Visual Studio. Source control? Okay. There's two different ways of dealing with it. Is you can either create your project external of Umbraco and just reference the DLLs and basically do source control on that project. That means that it's modular and can be moved around. If you're doing it like this, it does become a little bit more tricky. I used to work at Terabyte, and we had running source control there with cruise control. Basically, you just don't commit certain things. So you don't commit these temporary folders that have leucine indexes and things in them that you wouldn't want in the system. But all of your XSLT and stuff like that, yeah, you can totally source control all of that in your templates, and because they exist as physical files. Is there a particular? Oh well, I mean no. We're just using SVN commits, or I've got other clients who are using TFS to source control the project. With document types, you can export them as well. So if you actually wanted, because they exist in the database, but if you wanted to export those, you could then source control the exports. But sort of just get back into this really quickly because I'm running out of time. So we're just going to create a really simple news list for our site. I need to create two document types. Sorry, this Mac keyboard's mouse trackpad sucks. Okay, so I'm just going to create two. One is the news list, and this basically holds our news items in the tree. And I don't want to create a template because I've already done it. And I'm also going to create a news item. You can do inheritance on these document types as well. So if there's properties on other document types that you want in this one, so you don't have to keep recreating, you can inherit. Okay. So so for our news item, we just want to add some content to a tab named content. Okay, I'm kind of running out of time here, so what I think I might do is I'm going to cut this short. The point is that you can pretty much integrate heavily with Visual Studio, and I'm going to go into this tomorrow in more detail. I was a bit thrown when they asked me to do the 20-minute as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to jump back to my slide deck, and we'll just finish this up. The other thing that's really important about Umbraco is the community. The core plus community is what makes Umbraco. Without the community, the project would not be what it is. In terms of the Umbraco community, we have around 6,000 active users, people who are posting regularly on the forum or contributing content in terms of packages or wiki pages. We have, and then over 200,000 sort of unique community browsers every month. The forums, they're very active. There's posts constantly, and they're answered usually within sort of half an hour to an hour of a post, just because it's a worldwide thing, and it's growing rapidly. So I'll just talk about the future of Umbraco and where it's going really quickly. The next version is 100% MVC. It will be fully testable. The current version has some testing in the framework, just in terms of the development side of things for the core team. And you can test against link objects inside of the current version. But the next version, being MVC, it's fully testable from the ground up. It's going to be using a very heavy data provider model, which basically means that if you can write a provider for it, you can represent that content within Umbraco, through the APIs of your third-party product. We are working really heavily on separating the UI and the core logic. So that sort of ties in with that data provider. So Umbraco itself will just have a data provider that is talking to the UI layer, and which will be representing that content. The goal is basically to have Umbraco on X. So for instance, Umbraco UI on top of WordPress blog. And we've got some sort of very early tech demos of that working. Ways to get Umbraco: you can either get it through the web platform installer from Microsoft, through Codeplex, at Umbraco, or and the other thing, community site. Our Umbraco is probably the best place to go to get help, and Twitter. The #Umbraco tag is very active. And if you want to get in contact with me, my website, littlewebempire.com. You can email me, peter@littlewebempire.com, or Twitter as well. Cool. Is there any questions?